Hey, the crypto markets took a big hit this morning with XRP dropping as low as $1.93 at the time of recording. You can see the headline on the screen. It's pretty clear something major happened. In case you missed it, crypto market liquidations have soared past $701 million following U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. I'm here to break it all down and share some initial thoughts on what this could mean. You're wondering if you should be worried? Let's talk about it. From a market perspective, my answer is almost certainly no. And I feel pretty strongly about that. Let me explain why. When it comes to the real world implications of this, I think we can all agree that war or military strikes are far from ideal, even if they're sometimes deemed necessary. Now, just to be clear, I'm not here to share whether I think this is a good or bad development. That's not the purpose of this channel. Whatever your personal opinion may be, I respect it. My focus here is to talk about how these events are influencing the markets and what that means for us. Let's talk about one of my favorites, XRP. But before we dive in, I want to make something super clear. I don't have a financial background, and this isn't financial advice. Seriously, don't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I say or write. I'm just a crypto enthusiast who loves making YouTube videos about this stuff. It's purely a fun hobby for me, nothing more. All right, so as I'm recording this, it's Sunday, June 22, 2025. XRP is sitting at $1.95, and Bitcoin, wow, it's at $99,416. Quite a drop in the past 24 hours. Let's take a look at the latest market action. XRP hit a 24-hour high of $2.12 and a low of $1.93. Are we done with this drop? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. As for Bitcoin, it's had quite the ride over the last 24 hours. The high was $103,741, while the low dipped to $99,363, a significant drop for sure. And the altcoins, they are taking an even bigger hit than Bitcoin across the board. No surprise there. The total market cap for crypto has taken a pretty big hit too. How much are we down? Probably a couple $100 billion, maybe even $300 billion. It's been a wild ride, and this definitely feels like a major capitulation event. It's pretty interesting when you think about it. Chart analysts had been predicting something like this for a while. They said it was coming. Then, boom, a real world event triggered it. Now, you could argue that chart analysts don't really know what they're talking about, and it's all just a coincidence that things lined up the way they did. Fair point, right? But here's the thing. If this specific event hadn't happened, the price could have still dropped eventually. Maybe it would have taken another day, a week, or even a month. Chart analysts would say the pressure was already there, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. This just happened to be the catalyst that caused the drop we're seeing here. I know chart analysts will point to this as proof that their predictions were spot on, highlighting the key levels they called out ahead of time. And while we couldn't know for certain this was going to happen, it was definitely on the radar. If you've been following the news, you knew this was a possibility. Now, when you look at where prices have dropped, whether it's Bitcoin, XRP, or others, they're landing right at those key levels that tons of reputable chart analysts had been talking about. You can see this pretty clearly. There are areas with deep pockets of liquidity that stand out. So it's no surprise that when something triggers a big move, and in this case, it really was an event, prices tend to cascade down to those key levels. Basically, it's a flush out. This event just made it happen faster than it might have otherwise. After following chart analysts for nearly a decade, I'd say this is exactly the kind of thing they'd point to. And honestly, I think it's a pretty convincing argument. Of course, if you don't agree, that's totally fine. You're entitled to your own perspective. But for me, the way prices keep hitting these key levels makes the argument pretty compelling. At the end of the day, this was just a capitulation event. Here's an interesting post from Raoul Pal, former Goldman Sachs exec, founder of Real Vision, and a global macro investor. He and his team were the ones who really got me paying attention to global M2 and its impact on equity markets, especially Bitcoin and the broader crypto space. Take a look at this. Over the past couple of years, you can see how closely Bitcoin's price has tracked global M2. It's pretty fascinating and definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, what's really important to note is that there's usually a lag between changes in global M2 and Bitcoin's price movement, but overall, Bitcoin has been following it pretty closely. Sure, if you zoom in too much, it might not seem like there's a clear correlation, but when you step back and look at the bigger picture, the trend becomes obvious. Directionally, Bitcoin's price really does follow what's happening with global M2. About 90% of the time, Raoul Pal bases his best estimates on actual data, and today is no different. If you're wondering whether recent events have thrown things off or if it matters for the markets, don't worry, it doesn't. Just an hour ago at 9:34 a.m., he shared an updated GMI BTC-M2 chart. Nothing seems unusual here, but don't expect every little wiggle to align perfectly or all timing points to be exact. It's all about the bigger picture. And he's absolutely right. Alts tend to bleed more than Bitcoin during corrections. That's just how it works. So there's no reason to assume that something like a military strike signals the end. I get there's some concern out there about the possibility of this turning into a larger global conflict, which could shake up markets even more. It's totally understandable. But here's something to keep in mind. Historically, when military events cause markets to dip, it's usually a short-term reaction. That tends to be the pattern. Right now, there's no clear sign that this situation is heading towards something like boots on the ground, which would obviously escalate things in a big way. That kind of scenario could lead to much bigger challenges, of course. I'm not here to predict the future. I don't have a crystal ball, but I wanted to share these thoughts with you and provide some perspective. When events like this happen, markets tend to panic at first. It's what's called a capitulation event, but often it turns into a buying opportunity before things bounce back. This pattern has played out countless times, not just under this president, but under many others as well. We've seen contained military strikes directed at various countries over the years, and they didn't lead to broader conflicts or global chaos. These things happen. I remember back when I was younger during the Clinton administration, there were airstrikes in Afghanistan and Sudan. The point is, situations like this come and go. And while they can cause some short-term uncertainty, they don't necessarily signal a bigger crisis. I'm not saying there's zero chance of this turning into something bigger, but if you're watching the markets, these are the kinds of things you're probably keeping in mind. Usually, though, that's not how it plays out in situations like this. If I had to take a guess, I'd lean toward that side. When it comes to the markets, whether it's today, tomorrow, or soon, I think we're going to bottom out quickly and then continue moving upward. In hindsight, we'll probably look back at this and think, oh, that was just another great buying opportunity. Here's a post from Credible Crypto dating back to November 8th, 2022. Right after the FTX collapse shook the market, he shared some advice. The last thing you want to do is panic. Take a breath, stay calm, let things play out, think rationally, and only take action once you have the full picture. At the time, it felt like the world was ending. FTX collapsed and everyone thought it was game over, but guess what? It wasn't. Fast forward to last night, Credible Crypto reflected on that moment. He pointed out that when FTX crashed on November 8th, Bitcoin was around $17,500.00. 10 days later, the market hit its bottom at $15,500.00. And after that, Bitcoin went on to rally past $100,000, 0 cents. War, invasions, hacks, market crashes, Bitcoin bans, new regulations. There's always something to worry about, right? But here's the thing, panicking never solves anything. So how do you stay calm? By focusing on your charts and sticking to the key levels you've already mapped out. When you've planned ahead, you'll feel more confident and in control because you have clear areas of interest and invalidation to guide your decisions no matter what's happening in the world. Seriously, there's no need to panic here. Take a breath and stick to the plan. You've got this. Here's an update from the blockchain backer posted at 9:24 a.m., just over an hour ago. He's been predicting a final drop for Bitcoin, possibly down into the $90,000 range, maybe $95,000. Right now, Bitcoin's sitting just above $99,000, but it's hard to say if the drop is done yet. But by the time you're reading this, prices could have fallen even further. But what's important is that his analysis still holds no matter where the price lands. He's been warning about this move for a while, calling it the capitulating C leg on the chart. So while this might feel intense, it's something he's been expecting all along. Keep an eye on it. I don't want to speak for him, but my guess is he'd probably say that whether it was this specific event or not, it was bound to happen eventually. Sometimes you just have to let time unfold and then it happens anyway. It seems like it was inevitable. I'd honestly love to hear his take on this, especially if he touches on it directly. It'd be super interesting to get his perspective, but I think a lot of chart analysts are going to make the case for something similar here. Either way, what's clear is that he's saying this is the moment, the capitulation we've been waiting for before the big move to the upside. And let's not forget, he did caution about XRP dipping below $2. Hey everyone, I just stumbled across this post from chart analyst Bob Ye and thought it was worth sharing. Don't worry, I'm not here to dive into geopolitics or military conflicts. That's not really what we focus on here. But when it connects to financial markets, that's where I like to jump in. What's happening right now looks pretty bullish from a big picture perspective, with markets hinting at smoother sailing ahead. Honestly, I'm all in on that outlook when it comes to the markets. Check out this update from Casey Trades. Last night at 7:38 p.m., XRP hit the $2.01 support level we've been watching closely. Since then, there's been a bit more movement. It did dip lower, but the overall analysis still holds strong. Here's where it gets interesting. Reports came in that the US bombed Iran, and right on cue, XRP hit its first major 5e support at $2.01. We've been tracking this move for weeks, and the timing feels far from random. The consolidation drop wrapped up cleanly, and $2.01 held like a champ. Now we're seeing XRP start to bounce back, with bullish divergence showing on both the 15-minute and 1-hour RSI. This is exactly the kind of momentum we look for at key points like this. A clean RSI trend line is forming on the 1-hour chart, and we're keeping an eye on it to track the trend. Just a heads up though, we don't have confirmation on the 4-hour or daily charts yet. That means if this bounce doesn't hold, the next key supports to watch are $1.90 and $1.55, which are still in play. Right now, the algos are testing reactions at these levels. For confirmation, we'll need to see XRP get into the $3 range. As of now, it dropped again to $1.93. Honestly, this isn't surprising. It's something we've been prepared for. And here's the thing, this doesn't change the bigger picture at all. We're just building a solid base of support before XRP eventually pushes above $3. After that, it's all about price discovery and melt up spaces. Here's a post from XR Punky at 6:14 p.m. after last night's news. They're asking, now that XRP has dipped to $1.99, could we still drop into the $1.80, $2 they previously mentioned as a possible retracement before moving higher? Here's the thing to keep in mind. Good analysts know that no matter what caused the dip, in this case a real-world event, the key levels being tracked don't change. This is super important to understand. Those key levels are still intact because the same liquidity pockets are there, and this event simply acted as the trigger. Check this out. Crypto Insight UK called it just yesterday before the news broke. He was warning about Bitcoin heading into the $90,000 0 cents, S and XRP staying below $2. Fast forward to this morning at 8:37 a.m. and he posted again saying XRP is looking more promising and getting closer to a low, though there's still a little way to go. It seems like some people jumped in with leverage a bit early and they might get pushed out. It's not confirmed yet, but we're seeing a spike in open interest while funding is still positive. The good news, large spot buying is coming in, which is a great sign for a bottoming area, and funding is starting to flip negative. This is exactly the kind of price action he was expecting, and we're seeing it happen. Here's an update from chart analyst Zoom posted last night at 6:43 p.m. after the news dropped. He shared, now that XRP has hit the $2 zone, what's next? According to him, the $1.80 to $1.90 range has some solid buy walls, but if it closes below that, a drop to $1.55 isn't out of the question. As I mentioned below, I don't see XRP dropping below $1.80. By the time you're watching this, it could be lower, but don't panic. This isn't a time to freak out. On a larger scale, nothing has changed. What we're seeing now is the market shaking things up, and I fully expect, though nothing is ever 100% certain, that we'll see a rebound. From there, I believe we're heading for Bitcoin's final parabolic move. Altcoins should follow. XRP could hit a new all-time high, and well, cue the moon landing and Lambos. That's my take, but remember, I'm not a financial advisor. Please don't make any investment decisions based solely on what I say. That's just not a good idea. Stay smart out there.